Next up, we're going to thickness and we're going to shape the headstock. Thicknessing I'm going to do on the bandsaw with a little bit of planing, and then the shaping of it I'm going to use the spindle sander. I'd originally intended to use this as a router template and route round it, but I'm nervous about this veneer edge being end grain veneer, so I'm going to use the spindle sander instead, which just means a little bit of fiddling with plotting out the shape, which you'll see. I won't be able to put the template on the back because we're going to have a volute right here, so I'll have to make a paper template or something. But anyway, let's get on. Let's just trim the edge square to begin with so that we can get it on the bandsaw. This is a flush cut saw. I'll just take the veneer off. For some reason I didn't get that flush. That's better. That's actually not quite square. Actually, this edge doesn't have to be square, the other edge is, but the main reason for me planing this is just to make it easier to mark with a pencil. I think that will do. I've hit a small problem in that the headstock gets very slightly wider and jams under the blade guide. This is as high as it'll go. I've only got to take 1 millimetre off, and I will take it off from underneath. I can't really afford to lose any more from the top. But oh well. I could of course handsaw this, but I feel a bit more confident allowing the it's so much easier using the bandsaw. So I'm just going to take 1 millimetre off this section here, which I can easily afford to do. In fact, when I planed it, it didn't touch this bit here anyway, it just took off the end, so I'm just going to take some off there. Just go with me on this one and I'll explain after I've done it. The reason for the block should now be apparent. The table of the bandsaw dips here, and trying to put the neck on this part of the table, it was just wobbling. I couldn't keep it steady. This is actually flatter. I think the table drops and then comes back up again, so this is actually fairly square, as I'm hoping you can see from the way the blade matches up there as I lean round to check. Well, you can't really see that I think from that angle, but trust me. And of course with the block on, the block is of course square. It is my square block. It keeps everything stable. It's much easier to keep the whole thing straight. So hopefully now we can use the table saw. I am really pleased with the results. 14.6, this is without the veneer, obviously the veneer's just over 1.5 millimeters, and 14.3, 14.6, so that's within 0.3 of a millimeter, and this one is within 0.1 of a millimeter consistent. I think there was a slight taper on this due to the skew I had on the headstock, which I had to correct. So yeah, know the limitations of your tools. Nice, perfectly square planed block that I prepared, £100 Shepak bandsaw, and a really good result. I could at a pinch playing across, but I won't get it flat. But that's not bad. Still got to take it down to this little dip. Yeah, the danger here is I'm not keeping it flat at all, in fact. Let me just check the measurements of that, but we seem to be getting that fairly smooth, but I think I'll put a bit of a dip in it. Just got to take a little bit off this corner. This corner is a little bit proud, and I should really play in this way, but let's just see if I can just hit just that corner. If I hit the purple heart, they're probably going to get tear out, but there we go. I think that's better. That will probably do before final finishing. There's still a little bit of a saw mark there, but I can take that down with sandpaper. We're now 15mm here, fairly consistently up to this slight saw mark. And then it just increases a little bit till we're about 15.7 here. I do have a shoulder plane, and I could actually get that area a little flatter, but I'm happy to leave that until final carve, because of course we're going to have a volute here, and need a nice gentle curve into the volute. I'm happy with 15mm. I could lose a millimetre down to 14. I think I'd prefer to keep it nearer 15 maybe. As I've got the headstock already marked, I'm going to do the initial cuts with a block of wood attached to it, just to lift it off the table to allow for the headstock angle. I can't do the whole cut, but it will at least make it easier to mark it on the underside if I can see roughly where the edge is. And I'm probably going to hit the camera. No, I should be alright. Now you see the problems of having to mark it from this side. This is only a rough mark for the initial cutting, and we'll do a better job when we come to final finish it. Although maybe we'll just do it like this. I'm not going to dimension the neck until I've got at least the fretboard done, and possibly the tenon as well. I just want to keep everything square for now, and I'll use the fretboard to get the dimensions. So I'm just going to taper it, possibly steeper than that. This will just allow the spindle sander to get in there. After thinking about this, I've just gone with chalking up the headstock shape rather than creating a paper template. If I'd put a paper template over the volute, it would have shortened it by a couple of millimeters, which would have distorted this curve. That probably is overthinking it, but I think I'm quite happy. I just placed this on here and then drew around it as best I could, albeit with a 5mm, 9mm gap. And as a check and balance, I've also redone the lines on the front just to make sure I'm not going too wildly out. It all seems to be fairly consistent. So let's go to the spindle sander. Can you tell I'm pleased? That was a fun afternoon's work. I've left it a millimetre oversize at the nut, just to allow for the final carve and the fit of the fretboard. And I've got a slight ripple here and another ripple there. And I've got a slight high spot where the purple heart is, and I'll just need to hand sand those when I come to final finishing, but generally pretty smooth profile. Very happy with the result. So onwards and upwards. See you in the next video. Bye.